When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot.
Nordic blondes, for example, are so similar to humans that they can walk down the street and not be detected. None of them are exactly the same. They are way ahead of us in medicine, agriculture, and still, I guess, presumably in technology.
Out in the country, and, well, you just tell me what you saw.
Well, it was one ordinary day. I was waiting for my husband to come home from work, and my 2 sons went to Seifert to school, and I was getting changed, and I heard this terrific noise. It was just like a giant cauldron of water being poured onto a fire, a shh sort of noise, you know. And the first reaction was, oh, the children. I thought maybe a plane was crashing or something like that. And I slipped my jumper on and went outside to find my 2 sons lying flat on the ground in a garden in front of the house, shouting, "Mummy, Mummy, there's a flying saucer." Well, naturally, I just said, "Come on, don't be stupid. Come in the house." But felt sort of a strange sensation. Wended my way up the side of the house to where we had a pump where we used to get all our water from, and automatically looked up to see this, all I can describe, this huge Mexican hat. It was stationary, this thing, and it was bright silver in colour, and it had a dome. It was tilted to sort of, I could see the occupants in it.
You saw people in it?
I saw people in it. There were 2 people in there. These people were beautiful people. That's the only way I can describe them. They had long golden hair, like a page boy bob, just like the old kings. You used to see photographs of the old kings. And the colour of the hair was golden. Now, I was really...
What were they dressed in?
They had a sort of a polo-neck jumper affair, like a ski top suit, in pale blue. Now, these people weren't sat one behind the other. They were sat together, but this, whatever it was tilted so that I could see them and they could see me.
Were you looking at them through windows, through portholes? Or
no, not portholes. It was just sort of like a cockpit, I suppose, that had this perspex or glass or whatever it was. They could see me anyway, and I could see them. And they had beautiful faces. I shall never forget their faces as long as I live. Their foreheads seemed to be a bit larger than, you know, the bottom of their faces as normal people you would expect to see. But maybe this was just whatever they had round their heads, which was like a transparent fishbowl. And they just looked, and I was absolutely paralytic with fear. I couldn't move, although my mind was ticking over. And they looked so sympathetic that I was just mesmerised for what seemed to be, ages, but it could have only been seconds. And I turned to sort of look down at the boys, was unaware that they were with me, because I was so absorbed. And the next thing, I looked up, and it was gone.
How low had it been?
It had been the height, I couldn't tell you. But the house that you've seen, it was just on top of the roof. It was hovering on top of the roof.
How big was it compared with the size of the house?
It swallowed the whole circumference of the roof. I couldn't see, the roof was completely blotted out. The chimneys I couldn't see. All I could see was this massive object that I described as like a Mexican hat without the bubbles.
And then it flew away sideways or upwards?
No, I didn't see. I just looked up and it had gone. But I assume it went straight up, because for a short while after in the sky I looked around and I said to my two boys, "Where, can you see anything? Can you see anything?" And they said, "There it is, Mum," and they pointed up, and I watched it. It was just like a little cotton meal in the sky, and it circled us 3 times. It went round 3 times, and then it just shut off, and that was it. When I started to analyse myself afterwards, I feared that I might have had an hallucination, but then I knew I hadn't had, because my sons were so sure about what they'd seen and what I'd seen. And it went through my mind that it was a secret weapon from Russia, and then I thought, well, it can't be that, because if they had something like that, they wouldn't need to fear anybody or anything.
Were you scared by it? Did you run indoors?
Oh, I was petrified. I couldn't move. I couldn't move a muscle. I was paralyzed with fear. But now I wouldn't be. Because now, when I look back, you know, I think, what an amazing thing to have happened, and for me to have seen it.
And when your husband came home, where were you?
Well, when my husband came home from the office, I was locked in the house with my children, under a big kitchen table that we were using.
Under the table?
Under the table, yes. It's funny now when I look back, you know, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but this is the truth. This happened. And that's it. We were ridiculed. It was very embarrassing at the time, and people, they possibly thought, oh, she's a nutter. But, you know, who cares? This is something that's happened to me, and I'm a practically minded person, and that's it.
I tell people, like, a good way to look at this is, like, look at Syria. And Syria's in chaos because the United States and Russia are having a proxy war there. Now look at the Earth. It's the exact same thing. Different races are coming here, and they're trying to win against
so there's
each
more
other.
than one
Oh,
race.
yeah.
How many
This
different ones
universe we're talking about.
Right.
I don't know how many. I don't know.
But there's a bunch of different creatures, and they all have the same sort of technology.
Yeah, and some are very human. Some look just like you and I.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if we have craft and we have bodies, and the craft appear to be able to travel amongst the stars, and if that is what's ended up revealed, just hypothetically, what is your warning here?
Their warning is this. What if they don't travel among the stars? What if there's something else about these things that we don't yet understand?
Human-looking non-humans.
Right.
And the reason I'm saying this is that for many years, like I would push those stories aside psychologically. Like I did not want to consider them, despite the fact that when you go back through all of the UFO occupant sightings that people have had, probably the single largest group that people identify are operators of these craft that look human.
Yeah.
Okay, so Robert Bigelow said to me, "They're walking among us." I said, "What do you mean they're walking among us?" He said, they're walking among us. They live right here.
What if it turns out that there's another species that is even higher on that ladder than we are? Do we need the social institutions that we have today? Will we need governmental and religious organizations that we have today if it turns out that there is something else or someone else that is technologically more advanced and perhaps from an evolutionary perspective more advanced? Have we been wasting any time all this time? Or are we doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing?
Down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, "Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House?" And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The shape conclusions in '64 were that there were 4 groups that we knew of.